Let's talk about the brain today because it is such an interesting thing. And it's also interesting because I've had a friend recently come back into my life. And here's the thing about the brain it is designed to keep you safe, it is designed for survival, whether your current circumstance serves you or not. So if you find yourself constantly in chaos or in the same circumstance of like creating these same circumstances. So let's just rewind back to like my beginnings where my husband and I were living paycheck to paycheck. We were barely surviving. Our marriage sucked, if I'm being completely honest. At least I thought it did. I shouldn't speak for him. I'm speaking for me. I thought it sucked. And it was just such a heavy time and place in my life. And what I came to realize is that the further along we got, we would improve on our circumstances, but we would also be in similar circumstances. So we might be making more money, but again, we were still living paycheck to paycheck. And we were always like, what the heck? Why are we still living paycheck to paycheck when I'm now making $500 more a month, $1,000 more a month, whatever it is, right? And the thing is that we had stuff that we needed to work on. And your brain is wired for survival. So anything that is familiar also feels safe, right? Anything that seems familiar is familiar, feels familiar. Your brain corresponds that to like being safe. Whether it truly serves you or not, it feels safe. This is why so many people stay in circumstances that do not serve them well. This is why they stay in circumstances that are actually quite bad for them, stay in toxic relationships, um, continue to have poor spending habits or just don't pay attention to their money. And so then they are constantly in debt or having to put things on credit cards. This was also my case several years ago. And let me tell you, after paying off, oh my gosh, probably over $40,000 in credit card debt at one point, it feels so freaking good to have shifted that, to have noticed. And again, awareness is key. So until you are aware, you're never going to be able to make a change because you don't know what's happening. You just keep wondering, like, why? So if there's any of these questions, you're like, why do I keep finding myself in the same circumstance? Why can't I leave? Why can't I do this? If you find yourself asking questions often of that manner, then it's probably just because the good old brain is just trying to help you survive in life. And now you get to gain a new awareness. So I hope this episode like opens you up. This little pep talk here opens you up to a new awareness in your life that you're like, oh, duh. Like that is why I am still in this relationship. That is why we are still living paycheck to paycheck. That is why even though I've increased my income, things still feel tight. You get to figure out what that is for you, but start gaining an awareness around it. Again, I know I've talked about it before on these pep talks. This is the work. The work isn't going out and doing more. The work is reflecting internally to figure out why you do what you do, why you show up the way that you do, so that you can then shift that. This is what I help moms do. I help you shift everything in your life. I help you simplify. I help you show up differently so that you can truly create a life that you love and get out of the circumstance that you're in. Because the reason you are stuck in your circumstance is because your brain likes things that are familiar. So if you were raised in a house, this was my case. My biological dad was fairly abusive, mostly emotional. Every now and then it became physical. And so I was used to that constant chaos. I was also raised in a home that was like, money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that and all of that. And so my brain just got familiar with scarcity, never having enough. And that, even though that belief didn't serve me, That is what felt comfortable and safe just because it was familiar. And so, really looking at how you are raised and the current circumstances that you are creating, yes, you are creating these circumstances in your life. Until you gain an awareness around that, nothing is going to shift. And so, what I want this little pep talk to do is to open your mind up to, like, oh my gosh, I was raised the same way. No wonder why I think the way that I do about money. Or money is also tied to self worth. Trouble receiving, if you have a problem receiving money in your business, if you're constantly discounting your services, you're deeming yourself not valuable and not worthy. Where did that show up in your life before? And now, how can you take that instance? Let's just say the first time you remember somebody kind of making you feel like you weren't worthy, maybe even telling you don't deserve that or anything like that, right? How can you now go back and look at that through a different lens, through a different perspective? And how would you want to change that? So maybe it's like just envisioning yourself looking at that younger version of you, being like, this isn't true. And now we get to change it. Because until you can gain that awareness as to where it came from, why you're hanging on to this story, and then accepting it, just accept it. You don't have to judge it. It just is. It's just something that happened. Now, how can you view it through a lens of love and start to move forward in a different direction and decide how you want to live your life, what you want to believe, what's going to help you move forward, right? Because we get to step out of our comfy zone. That's where growth happens. And that's where you're going to start to have a lot of fun. When you get out of the comfy zone, start to make different decisions in your life and really go in a different direction while letting go of those old stories and beliefs that are keeping you stuck simply because they're familiar. So really start to think about some of those things that might be coming up for you now. Let's write them down. And then I just want you to really envision, because remember, our brains cannot tell the difference between what truly happened, what is reality, and what is not. So you can envision yourself changing the narrative on your story. You can envision yourself meeting that person who just got told she wasn't worthy with a lens of love, giving her a big hug in your vision, and grabbing her hand and now moving forward in the direction that you want to go. Only you have the power to do this. Only you have the power to change your current circumstances. And that starts by first gaining an awareness and second, stepping out of that comfort zone. Change the narrative on your life. I know that's why you're here. That is probably why you found podcasting, is because you want a change in your life. You want different results. And you have to start looking at some of these things and letting them go so that you can now step into that newer, better version of you that's going to actually grow and create different results in your life. And I will talk to you next time.